Guys, huge update. Filmmakers have found Sandy Irvine's body. Well, at least they found his foot in a boot. But let's talk about why that's important and why this is huge news for the climbing community and the history of Mount Everest. So at the end of the 2023 climbing season, I put out this video. Aw, look how bright and cheerful the set looks. It's so green. But anyways, in that video, I went over a brief history of climbing on Mount Everest, including some famous summits, some famous bodies that became landmarks that are no longer there. Thank you, comments, for helping me clear that one up, and the routes that most people take. And one of the more interesting parts of that video, at least in my opinion, was the mystery of George Mallory and Sandy Irvine. Their expedition, anyway, up to Mount Everest. So here's the shorter version of what happened to George Mallory and Sandy Irvine. And for the longer version, go watch my original video. In 1924, George Mallory and Sandy Irvine attempted to summit Mount Everest for the first time. The first time for them and for anybody. As far as we know, nobody had summited up to that point. They attempted to summit from the north face of the mountain, coming from Tibet through China, right? Most climbers attempt it from the south face of the mountain through Nepal, at least in the modern day. Mallory and Irvine weren't new to the mountain either. They had done reconnaissance trips. I think they did one in 1921, again in 1922, which led to the death of 9 Sherpa while we're at it. So that wasn't a good trip. And, they had attempted to summit before. Mallory was also the one who, when asked why he wanted to climb Mount Everest, responded with, "Because it is there," which has become a really famous line now that encapsulates why adventurers, explorers, mountaineers, thrill seekers, and the like put themselves through dangerous expeditions like summering Mount Everest. Because it's there, because they want to conquer it, because it makes them feel alive. Mallory and Irvine made it pretty far. They were last sighted 800 vertical feet from the summit, which is pretty darn close. But then they disappeared. And the question remained, did they reach the summit, or did something happen to them before they were able to get there? And how would we know if nobody saw them, right? Enter the camera. Irvine kept a camera with him. It was given to him by another mountaineer. So historians, adventurers, mountaineers, everyone has been speculating that if they could find that camera, perhaps it can tell the world whether or not they actually summited before disappearing. And there's all kinds of rumors out there about the Chinese had found their bodies and took the camera, but that can't be proven, right? We don't know that for a fact. We don't know where the camera is, if it made it, if it's destroyed, if they find it, is it even still usable? Can we get the film? We just don't know. It's a huge, huge question and a fun mystery about Mount Everest. Now, Mallory's body was discovered by an American mountaineer on May 1st, 1999, which was 75 years after he died, and they did not find a camera with him, or Sandy Irvine. Irvine's body wasn't found. It was just a mystery. We had no idea. Until very, very recently, when filmmakers found an old boot somewhere on the central Rongbuk Glacier, and inside that boot was a frozen foot wearing a sock with A.C. Irvine stitched in the hem with red thread. They found him. They found his, they found his foot in a boot, but they found him, right? It's been 100 years since he went missing, but he has now been found, putting that mystery at least to rest. And not only is it cool to have found one of these intrepid explorers after all of this time, but now it makes us ask the question again. Can we find the camera? And if so, would it change the world of mountaineering forever? Now, the first successful summit that's been verified and recorded was on May 29th, 1953. You might notice there's a lot of May dates here. That's primarily the best month for climbing Mount Everest. Now, Tenzing Norgay, a Tibetan Sherpa, and Sir Edmund Hillary, a New Zealand mountaineer and explorer, managed to get to the top using the South Col route, the route that approaches Everest from the south face of the mountain through Nepal. This was 29 years after Mallory and Irvine attempted to summit but disappeared. well, died. They died. They didn't just disappear. So if we can find their camera, we can potentially find out if Mallory and Irvine summited before their deaths. And if that's the case, then our history of summiting Mount Everest changes forever. Now, in their wisdom, the three filmmakers who found Sandy Irvine, and well, the three filmmakers in their team who found him, Mark Fisher, Jimmy Chan, and Erick Roepke, are not saying exactly where they found it. They want to preserve the site, right? They don't want people trekking around out there trying to find their own evidence, because that's probably just going to lead to more deaths. Side tangent, because if you know me, you know I love my tangents. That whole situation reminds me a lot of Alexander Supertramp. Have you heard about his story? It was made into a famous movie with, I think, Emile Hirsch played him. Now, it's all about the adventurer Christopher McCandless, who was kind of done with the world and wanted to go off and explore and do his own thing, and he eventually went out missing in Alaska. He was later found in an abandoned bus, but his story became super, super famous, right? He represented all of our desires to just eschew this modern life and just go and live in the wilderness and become one with the land and find yourself, right? Like he was a huge figure for that movement. So people were really interested in making pilgrimages to see where Alexander Supertramp, Christopher McCandless, to find his final resting place, right? Find the bus, be there, be in that moment, find themselves, be a part of it all. But a lot of people died in the pursuit of doing so because the land itself is quite swampy. There's a river that cuts through there sometimes. Alaska, I don't know, wildlife? No, it wouldn't be wildlife. Maybe just the police. I don't know. They constantly having to go and rescue people looking for this thing, so they ended up having to move the bus for everyone's safety. So I could understand why the filmmakers are not specifically saying where they found the boot. The mountain is a revered place, right? And it's home to countless dead bodies, many of which have to stay on the body. Go watch my other episode for that. There's a whole interesting bit about what you do when you find a body, because you can't just remove remains. Like, you can't just do that. That's illegal. So they didn't want people tramping all over the mountain, potentially disturbing the site, potentially making it harder to find evidence if the camera is out there, but also trying to save people's lives, because people absolutely will go out there trying to find stuff for themselves, and we don't need any more unnecessary deaths. Enough people die on Everest as it is. So in the coming days and weeks and years, it will be really interesting to see if they can find this camera, because you know that there's going to be a renewed interest. There was a lot of interest back in 1999 when they found George Mallory's body, but because they never found Irvine, it kind of like dwindled down over time. But now, with the discovery of Irvine's foot in a boot, it's going to absolutely spur more people, experts, hopefully just experts, to go down there and look for the camera. But at least for now, we have found Sandy Irvine's body, putting to rest one more mystery from the world's tallest mountain. Who knows if we'll find more. Thanks for joining me for this quick history update. My name is Kelly Beard, and if you haven't already checked out my other episodes, go have a listen. And be sure to subscribe for more gross, disgusting, and weird history, all to make history more fun and accessible for you.